Welcome, welcome everybody. Welcome to another essential conversation here at Wellbeings, and I'm so grateful to be joined by Dr. Alex. Hi, Doctor.
Hi, good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. Yes, it's both of us. Good morning.
Yes.
Today, everyone, we're going to talk about many things, but one of the subject matters today is talking about, well, first of all, what is efficient sex, and what's the pitfalls, and why is it so common in the world today? And this topic came from two guys in one of my groups sharing that their partners were complaining that there was too many quickies happening, and there was a lack of intimacy. And then I flipped open Psychology Today on the phone, and up pops they're talking about the same thing. It's like epidemic proportions. We're not doing what we once used to do with people, and we're not getting into non-efficient sex, which is what happens, I imagine, where we, when we first start dating, it's explored, it's all that we take a bit of longer, we take longer in the inquiry. So let's start talking about it. Is that something you notice yourself when you're working with couples and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a sign of our times. Like, I was just on a call with a group of therapists, and somebody said they wanted to pass around a video they saw that explains a certain sort of way of being in the world, or the way that therapists do therapy. And he said, but it's only 14 minutes. And I thought, yeah, that's about all we can stand today, is like 10 or 14 minutes. Don't stretch my attention too much past that, or I can't handle it. I'm overwhelmed. I don't have time. So I just thought that was interesting as he was pitching what a great video this was, that he had to let us know that it wasn't going to place undue burden on us. And I think that's what's happened with sex and everything else, that we are so overwhelmed, first of all, by all of the literal insanity in the world, climate change being the overarching, fear that we all have, even if we're not aware of it. And then the socio-political unrest across the globe. And then it comes down into the town we live in, and our jobs and our home lives. And it's just a crushing amount of, responsibility, and all of the, the things that pull us every day. So it's very easy to roll over, have sex, get off, and then get on with the day, so to speak. So I don't think this is uncommon at all. And I think actually for some people, they're lucky if they're even doing that.
Yeah. And that's exactly what was said in the group. There was somebody turned around and said, "What are you complaining about? I haven't had sex since 1989 or something like that." He was saying it was a good long time since sex, but let's explore this a little bit. What do you think, Doc, is the pitfalls that starts to impact a relationship where it's well, first of all, it's great that there's sex happening. Let's just flag that, as you said.
Right.
But what happens over time if that's what it is for some characters, some personalities in a relationship?
I think people generally start to marginalize their relationship. We fall in love. Sometimes we get married. We forge this bond and attachment, and then it feels so strong and so amazing that we then neglect it. We take it for granted. We just trust that it's going to be there. And then we keep piling stressors on top of it, like having a child, or both people having jobs or careers. And then if you've got aging parents or someone sick in the family, there are always other things pulling our attention. And the marital bond, when I say marital, I mean the sort of coupled bond between two people, starts to get frayed and sags. If you will, just like a garden that, let's say you have a garden that is all drought resistant, it's all succulents. But even so, at some point, those succulents do need water, no matter how hardy they are. And so people will do things like try to have date nights, or they'll try to find ways to eke out some semblance of a connection But that can also be like, sort of this maintenance sex where it's just perfunctory. It's going through the motions. It's a nod to the problem. It's not taking care of the problem in a very deep way. And
Yeah,
then, yeah.
yeah. I think that was kind of like what I was experiencing in the therapy group when it was the wife, two wives were complaining that it was there was a poverty in the sexual relationship in a sense, and she needed more time,
Mhm.
and it's okay, but it's been like this for a long time. So she was starting to build sort of resentment, and then of course then says, well, if it's only going to be this, then and you're not open to change it. So he was just sharing the struggle around like an upset woman, and it was there was lots of different dynamics going on that I don't think we need to share here, but it was just one of the members or the partners were disappointed.
Hmm. Yeah. And disappointed. Can you say specifically in what?
Yeah, there wasn't enough time. She needed time for her to get, she would have liked foreplay. She would have liked,
Ah,
you specific, sexy talk. There was different things which I thought was so good. She was naming her needs.
right. Exactly. And what was his response to that?
He, he came in thinking that she was being greedy. Like it was. He came in and said, "Wow, like she's looking for this and she's looking for this, and I've got to take care of the kids, and I got to go here and I've got to go there." And
Right.
I think he was bombarded by everyday life,
Yes.
and I think you were
Right.
sharing earlier. Anyway, that's what happens.
Right. But he wasn't hearing it as her desire and need for connection with him. And she wasn't making herself vulnerable. I don't know this woman, but hypothetically, she wasn't making herself vulnerable by saying to him, I miss you. I want to connect with you. I need to feel connected to you in my heart and soul in order for my body to respond. And that's by slowing down. It's not by just, women are not like men in that way, just in general. There's this whole thing where for men, it's sort of like hit and run. And women can't do that. Our bodies are not set up in that way. There's an inverse relationship, it seems, where women have to feel connected from their hearts in order to be sexually aroused, and men feel connected through sexual arousal for their hearts to be involved. Like men feel loved when they have sex, and women have sex when they feel loved. So it's some kind of design flaw, but that's just how it is. So I think that's kind of what they were up against, is that I would recommend, be more vulnerable with him, more forthcoming, so he can hear, oh, she really misses me. She wants me. She wants to desire me, not that I'm not doing it right. She's so demanding. I've got other things I need to get done.
So I think whenever there's a struggle with, crickets being on the menu all the time, or where one of the members are struggling, it's a real invitation for that C word, like the communication to start to get ramped up again, because somehow
Yes.
it's been foreclosed somehow along the way.
Right. And this is a real challenge when it comes to secure functioning in relationships. That if the couple are not the primary entity, Stan Tatkin talks about the couple bubble. All of the strategic family therapists talked about the executive system, that the parents have to be the main system and not let, the kids can't be splitting that, playing one end against the other, or being more important. And how we manage things outside of the couple bubble is crucial to the relationship, whether it's a child, whether it's a dog and a cat, whether it's in-laws, whatever those third things are that are impinging on the relationship, those things have to be talked about and agreed upon about how they're being managed. in order for the couple to go forward securely. So if you're in a relationship with another person, that person should be the most important person to you. And it's not to say your child isn't, they are, but in a different way. So am I getting my needs met? Am I meeting the needs of my partner? Do I even know what my partner's needs are? Have I checked in with them recently to find out? Someone might say, gosh, my need isn't sex right now. I'm super stressed out at work. I don't feel very sexual, but boy, do I need your love and your support and a hug every day and affection. And I need to know that we are still connected, not that you don't see me at all, and that you've completely unhooked from the relationship because you're stressed out.
Yeah,
Right?
this is so common, Doc. I think because
Yeah.
I think it's 2 or 3 times this week I had new clients come in presenting this particular thing, like where the husbands were. It was, yeah, there was 3 women that were complaining about this, and of course it was like they were starved of the communication. They were starved of the intimacy, the space holding,
Right.
the interest in them, like
Yeah.
crazy interest, like where they would, and whenever they can't communicate that, they start demanding. It's like that project the unmet child demands onto the partner, but there's an honest need that's not being communicated. And out of this week, it was interest. They wanted time for their partner to be interested in them.
Yeah, and they get angry because they're not. Yes, I had a woman ask her husband recently, do you even see me? I don't even know if you see me. You never compliment me. It doesn't matter what I have on or how my hair looks, or you just never say anything about how I look. I don't even know if I'm attractive to you. And that's such a lonely place to be, no matter what side of that you're on. If your partner doesn't say, you're handsome or you're sexy or I love you or any of those terms of endearment, then we're really just sort of left to fill in the gaps. And our tendency is to fill them in a negative way, which is I'm not attractive, I'm not wanted. And all sorts of feelings come up from that. And they're usually inaccurate because we're bad reporters. So that's why I think it's essential for people to check in with each other a lot, if not daily.
I think that's, we all, for any of the viewers watching, like when you're in a relationship, and we talk about this almost every week, you have to put some work into it. It just doesn't happen like in the Walt Disney movies. There's
Right.
it's not like, because there's an argument, that means that there's something wrong. I just focus on my job and neglect the kids and the wife. It's like there's work, there's real work involved to have an intimate relationship.
Yeah, and it's a commitment to work on yourself, honestly. How interested are you in yourself and how you tick and what you want your life to be about? And do you have a partner that's interested in being on that kind of journey with you also, who doesn't feel like, years ago when I was dating, I was in graduate school and someone said to me, dating you is like, reading a textbook. Like you always want to analyze everything and understand everything. Obviously, that relationship didn't go anywhere, but it was very funny in the moment because I didn't think that. I thought something else about myself, but that was not his perception. But finding someone who's on a path of self-awareness or in recovery, if you're in recovery, where you share a common language and an agreement that you are interested in your personal growth and development. You want to know about your sexuality over time. That it's not like, we start having sex in our 20s and then in our 40s expect it to be the same way. That we're actively working on helping each other grow into our full potential. That's a real gift to give somebody, that we're here to meet our potential. And maybe our potential means that we might not want to be with each other any longer. That's a scary thought. Or it means that we will be together till the day we die because we keep falling more deeply in love with each other.
Yeah, that's, it's such a, in America today, I did a podcast there like 2 days ago on it was a divorce lawyer who stops and pauses the person who's looking for a divorce to help and say, hey, well, let's take a look at yourself first. It's
Oh,
an
that's
unusual
great.
sort of where it's like it's all about, no, look, you want to change, you want to end something, let's look at what's going on internally here first before.
Right.
Where, from a normal lawyer in the States might think, well, you're shooting off your foot here, like what are you doing? Like,
Sure,
because
yeah.
but she's helping so many people just
I'll
to
bet.
swing it around. So it's like, when you're in, when you're, again, for the viewers watching, it's like there's like these moments that come along throughout our life where there's always invitations to get to know yourself, and if you want to, if you want to really be able to hold your partner deeply, you have to be able to learn to hold your own ordinary worst parts, or at least bring them into awareness, so that then you have a capacity then to be able to witness, behold your partner's ordinary worst parts. So, by the way, if you haven't worked it out, your partners are not perfect and shouldn't be perfect either.
Any more than you are.
Exactly. And so another thing is, like, what is that spice that happens when we first meet someone, doctor, that diminishes over time, that cannot be brought back into the relationship to help it not be so efficient sex, where it can be that non-efficient, more exploratory sort of sex that we had when one was first started to meet their partners?
Well, when we meet people, there's a high level of novelty, and that novelty is excitatory, right? It activates the dopamine system, the reward system, and that is nature's way of gluing us together to create an attachment for about 2 to 4 years, which is about what it takes to bring a child to stability. And that is, a very high state of novelty, love, connection, attachment, etc. That's the thing that has us saying we'll be together till death do us part. But over time, that dopamine system regulates itself, it downregulates itself. And there are other neurochemicals that are molecules that, sort of, populate our systems as well, which have to do with attachment and closeness and trust. So things even out. We couldn't live in that heightened state all the time, or we'd just be lunatics and making bad decisions all the time, like buying clothes that are too expensive to impress the other person and any number of other things. We would be obsessing about them constantly, because when dopamine goes up, serotonin goes down. So that's why we're always wondering about, where's he going? What's he thinking? Is he going to call me? Is he not? So that's all maddening in a good way, but you can't sustain that over time. And so one of the most novel things people can do is look into each other's eyes. So with the couple I was talking about, I got them to sit knee to knee and look at each other, and they could barely do it. And they said, this is one of the problems, is that we don't look at each other. We don't make eye contact. So if you're not making eye contact, there's no way to see, do you see the beauty of your partner, the pain of your partner, the reasons that you fell in love with this person? Sometimes, after 20 years of marriage, I can look at my partner and say, who is this guy? Who is he actually? As opposed to, I know all about him, right?
It's funny you're saying that, Doc, because not this week, last week we had one of the guys in the group do that, but they did it in a different way, where we got there was an invitation, and it was for the partner. The wife felt, again, not seen, not heard, and the sex life wasn't great, so, and she wasn't trusting him in a way, but they wanted to move forward and do something different. And so the invitation was to have a love date, and one of the love dates was gazing each other's naked body, like drinking it in, like sitting there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and really seeing the other, and for the other to receive the gaze. And they would have always been people who would have, sex was about, touch that had to go somewhere, and This didn't go to sexual intercourse. It went somewhere completely new that surprised them in a whole new way, where there was a level of sensuality and a heartfelt sort of expansion of the heart was what this old 65-year-old guy had shared. That was beautiful.
Amazing. Yeah. Right. And so that's what you want to be looking for is the novelty. Like you said, when you first have a new lover, it's slow, it's seductive. You're, sort of curious about their hands and the way their skin feels against your skin and the feel of their lips up against your lips. Everything is heightened in its sensation. And with efficient sex or quickies, we're just barreling past all of that. It's all about orgasm and getting off, which you can do with masturbation just as easily. Now, it's different because you do have a connection with your partner, but I think it's those things work best when you have made these deeper connections and you're sustaining them. Obviously, you can't have that kind of time all the time. And so, in between, if you have quickies, great for fun and for free. But you have to also cultivate the garden in that way by having these explorations of touch, gazing, getting out of the idea of performance or penetration altogether and being deeply curious about who is this person, that I'm with now? Whose body is this now? How has this body changed over time? There can be a poignancy to that also that maybe has to do with grief and loss, but also gratitude that you've gotten to age together in this body or whatever the situation is. But slowing down, there's this whole movement now towards slow cooking instead of fast food, right?
Yeah.
Fast food serves a function. It's great if you're starving and you're on the go and you've got 2 minutes. But do you really want to eat like that every day? It's terrible for your digestion, your health, your well-being. Wouldn't you rather take time to slowly make something and then savor it when you eat it? And that's really this distinction we're talking about here.
A lot is something you said really, really struck a chord, and it was this thing about, about building that closeness and building that interest to see and be curious about the other in a way, almost like if you ever look at a tree, from one season to the next, it changes. And
Yeah.
there's something about like to have that interest for your partner where as and this is more in the committed long-term relationships where the worst case of this I saw when I was back in Ireland, where I was seeing a married couple finish their sentences, like they had been
the worst, yeah.
so accustomed to I know what Johnny's going to say. I'll just say it. I'm fed up. He's too short. So merged up to the hilt, but
yeah.
without going into that, just that level of, well, I know exactly who this person is, and it's such a believable falsehood because it's
Right. And just as you say it, you can hear just how collapsed down that system is. It's not open at the top at all. There's no possibility in that. I already know you. I already know what you're going to say. It's incredibly dismissive and reductive, and just the door's closed on that. And then what happens is people leave their relationships or they have an affair, and then they have an experience of themselves where that person is completely enthralled with them. They're curious about them. They don't know what they're going to say. They're interested in them. And it's like, well, no wonder that feels better. Of course, that's going to feel better. So we have to be very, very careful about that collapse in our day-to-day relationships. By asking questions like, how are you today? Like, genuinely, how are you? How was your day? What was hard about it today? Even if you know that your partner is complaining every day about a job they don't like, get curious about what they don't like about it, what they're thinking about, if they're thinking about getting out of it, how they might do that, instead of thinking, well, just get out of it already. Like, you just complain about this, you're miserable every single day, instead of recognizing that it's a process that we all have to process in that way. We don't just decide and then make a clean cut. It never works that way, no matter what it is. Whether you're thinking about getting a kitten or Whether you're thinking about leaving a job or thinking about putting new tires on your truck, what kind of tires do you want? What kind of poke do you want? What kind of, wheels do you want? I mean, this is a process that could go on for weeks and months as you figure out what you want, as
And
opposed to someone saying, just buy the tires and get on with your life. Why are you wasting so much time?
yeah, like in that same character that would be saying that would probably not involve the other partner in much of their sort of thinking, or like
Mm,
so many times I hear he just went ahead and did it anyway. He didn't share it with me. He didn't consult with me. He didn't talk about it. Like he just does whatever he wants in the relationship, and I'm not really involved in it.
mm,
There is no space for that collaboration, and where we can,
right.
where it's just, sometimes we, in relationship, you can be in a very isolated mind, uh, and and in that isolated mind, you don't see the other, and you're just like in a relationship by yourself sometimes.
Well, right. That's what I would call a one-person system. That's not a two-person system. It's
Yeah,
like two people in their own orbits in the same house, as opposed to being in collaboration with each other in relationship. And what do you think about this? Like, for example, if somebody was asking me about tire size and height and wheels, I wouldn't know much about that, but I would be curious about why my partner was excited about it or what they were thinking about. And probably not the actual details of the way axles and wheels work, but more about that, it was kind of fun for them or interesting for them, or they were meeting cool people that were helping them figure this out. And, but I would also expect that my partner was going to tell me about how much that was going to cost. Right. And, if that was impacting our budget in some ways. But otherwise, I'd be really happy that they had a hobby and that this was something that was really bringing them joy today. So
yeah,
it's about discernment too, about knowing how much to share, to be inclusive. But I think what happens is people feel threatened, like, oh, she's not going to let me spend money on these tires, so I'm just going to go do it. And that's a
yeah.
very childish move, actually.
It's the rebellious part that shows up,
Yeah.
the child state, that really can cause a lot of conflict, in relationships. That, but I've something that you were saying that made me have a thought about another thing in a relationship that that impacts connection and impacts the a sort of a stagnantness or a disappointment in the bedroom, and it's a thing called timing, right? When
Mm.
the timing is right, when when to sit and be like intimate, and to talk, when to start foreplay and go really really slow, and when to go really really hard,
Right. Sure.
and to get the right timing at the right time, you
Mhm.
know, because this was something that popped up recently as well, as like the struggle with, again, I think it comes down to communication, doc, but it's just that the
Right. But
frustration.
also, yeah, but it's also nonverbal communication. It's about reading your partner. It's about making eye contact, about paying attention. Is your partner aroused? Are they aroused enough? What kind of sounds of pleasure are they making? If they're not, then you need to talk to them about wanting more of those cues. Is the female lubricated enough? Like what is actually going on between the two of you? And so often for women, they suffer through intercourse when they're not really ready for it, or
Exactly.
they need lubrication and they're too ashamed or um, adolescent in a way to not say, I'm going to try out different lubrications. I'm reading about different ones. I've gotten some samples. I'm going to try different things out during sex because it's what I need to feel comfortable. And the male has to be able to hear that without feeling diminished or like they're not good enough lovers or, you can't make it about yourself. Like these are bodies, and bodies take different things and need different things to be aroused in order to get over that arousal threshold to move towards orgasm. So there has to be enough arousal and stimulation. And what happens with, sometimes quickies or what you're calling efficient sex is that it becomes kind of a death spiral to sex because bad sex starts to beget bad sex. So it gets worse over time. It doesn't get better. And then both people are just kind of enduring it, or one is enduring it, hoping just to get it over with because, it makes their partner happy or it gets them off their back. All sorts of reasons that people, really deceive themselves and their partners.
When that starts to happen, because again, this is where the efficient sex can be something that's endured by the other person, and it's hiding a bigger can of worms in a way that's not been expressed. And the woman in a way, or the man in a way, whoever's the one that's not happy, is just regressed in a way and not being authentic and not being open. And it's not just about the partner who's not sensitive. It's about the other partner not communicating.
Correct.
And at that stage, there needs to be if they can't find that communication, couples therapy or giving you a call or going to a therapist would be required.
I mean, what's really dangerous about that is it can tip over into marital rape, right? Where somebody is doing something that they don't want to do. Like there's no consent there, but they're not speaking up for whatever reasons they can't speak up, whether they are dissociated or maybe they have sexual trauma that they've never healed. And so the person who is, quote, doing the raping doesn't even know it. Or they know, but they don't know, meaning they know their partner's just laying there and not really enjoying it, but they don't care because they're getting off. So this can start to get dark and problematic when it starts to tip over into what I would call lack of consent, which goes back to what you're saying, is that if you're not talking about sex, if you're not communicating about it, then how can you possibly have optimal sex? How can you have the kind of sex that you want? Or Peggy Kleinplatz calls it sex worth wanting. When people don't have sex worth wanting, that's actually good judgment. If you're having boring sex, or if you're having obligatory sex and you don't want to do it anymore, I would say good for you.
That's powerful. Right? No, that's good. So anybody who's listening, if you're having sex and you're not happy, let your partner know about it. You have the right to say that. You have the right to, you're in a relationship with somebody. And maybe from historic, happenings in the relationship, you might be assessing, it wouldn't be safe to say something to my partner. Maybe he would get childish, or maybe he would sulk, or maybe he could get angry, so for somebody who might be thinking that, Doc, what would you tell them? How would they move forward then?
Well, I think, that really does require a conversation, maybe with a fair witness, which would be a counselor or a therapist. And maybe the person, if in this case we're splitting it up by gender, the female goes and sees a counselor by herself to help her figure out how she wants to word this in a way that's really about her experience and not about attacking or assaulting her partner as being a bad person. And just saying, I'm not enjoying sex the way I used to. I notice I'm not as aroused as I used to be. These are the things I'm struggling with. This is what's on my mind, maybe. And then finding that would be her own individual work, and then finding a couples therapist that could assist the couple in this dialogue, or a sex therapist that could assist them with talking about how are they going to make these changes? What do they need? And, I think a question that's really useful is for us all to ask ourselves, what kind of sex life do I want to have? What kind of sex do I want to have? What are the things I fantasize about, imagine, dream about? Can I talk to my partner about my sexual fantasies? What would that be like? Because even the talking about the fantasy doesn't mean you're going to do it, but the talking about it can be quite arousing to both parties.
We did something a couple of months back with a couple, and they had homework, and they had lots of different homework. But one homework was they went off and they did separately a sexual fantasy vision board of what where they took the time to get the colors and the textures and the smells and like whatever creative aspect, and it was really quite powerful. and then they brought them back, and then they compared the similarities and the crossovers, and then they went down, and that brought the conversation in, and that was
Sure.
one way for them to capture just that sort of the part that they would keep in private in this
Right.
particular situation.
So the feeling state. So yeah, I would encourage couples to look at, a lot of times date night is a dinner and then everybody's stuffed and no one wants to have sex after that. Um, so what if a date night was that you sent your kids to your parents' house if you can, and that you also look at your room and the space that you're having sex in. Does it feel particularly sexy? Is it clean? Does it have a beautiful vibe to it? Whether you light a candle or burn some incense or have some flowers or something that makes you feel sexy. Maybe you plan this together with somebody taking care of the space and someone else taking care of the playlist. What kind of music do you want to listen to? Um, and set yourself the task of just being with each other as opposed to doing to each other and not feeling obligated towards intercourse at all, and seeing other ways that you can be creative about sex and sensuality. And this is one of the complaints I have about pornography, not all porn, but that it's just so uncreative. It's definitely rote. There are particular acts, there are particular camera shots, and it's almost a prescription of this is the way sex should be. And in some cases, it's not even sex; it's actually violence now. I wouldn't call it sex at all. So, what is your idea of what you want these encounters to look like? What do you want to feel? How do you want to connect? Where's your discomfort in connecting? What if you set the stage and all you did was, sit together on your bed and just make eye contact for a few minutes? What comes up? Do you laugh? Do you get nervous? Are you uncomfortable? Do you feel ashamed? Do you start to cry? And don't judge any of it. Just let yourself be with how powerful it is to connect with this person that you supposedly love more than anybody in the world. Can you make yourself vulnerable, or do you notice that you feel defensive, that your heart feels closed, that you have resentments, that you're angry? And if that's the case, you need to start talking about those with each other, because there's really not going to be the kind of connected sex we're talking about with resentments and anger in the way. It's just too big of a blockade.
Absolutely. That's a lovely, it's a wonderful invitation to slow it down, to see what the turbulence could be in the contact, in
Mm.
that moment where you are there's no distractions, and it's got that lovely, you've set the scene, and there's an invitation for you to get in touch with yourself and an invitation to get in touch with your partner. And there's a full encyclopedia of what could arise then in that silence together.
Right. I mean, I love what you just said, the turbulence in the contact. That's a great phrase. And yes, I think what you're talking about, Nigel, is not a handbook on how to have sex. I mean, there are only so many positions, right? But when you say, like, what could emerge from this, to let yourself be surprised in the way the couple was surprised that you were talking about earlier, when they just explored each other's bodies. These are safe surprises, as one therapist has named them. So set a space that is safe, that feels like a sanctuary, where the doors are locked and nobody's going to invade your space, and you've got lots of time to see what surprises emerge. And even if the surprises are that we are angry and we have resentments and we haven't been talking about it, great. Now they're on the table. Now we can face them together and negotiate them and work them through. Or maybe the surprise is something erotic happens that neither one of you ever dreamed or imagined could happen.
Wow. So if you're watching, everybody, get the kids round to your parents or to a relative's house or somebody that you trust. But yeah, so we're just coming to the end here, but this is really powerful. It's really about communication. It's really about taking time to listen, to be interested in our own journey and in the journey of our beloved. It's really important to set aside time, to make time in the busyness of an ordinary world that can be bombarded with things to do, with an endless checklist. That there is space that's non-negotiable at least once a week. I tell my clients at least once a week where you can have that time, and if not, then when you can, but at least as often as possible, where you make the time. And I love that lovely meditative invitation of gazing and meeting the storm in the contact, and the beautiful passionate storm, or bring up to the surface the emotional aspects that need attention and time and exploration together. And God, this is great. I know what I'm doing tomorrow night now. So you've just sometimes we talk about food and I get hungry, but you've given me an idea for tomorrow's evening. My wife's sleeping right now, but she'll see this.
It'll be a surprise, right? Nice.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and know that if there's real turbulence in the relationship and you are frozen to communicate, and this all feels like way too much, too quick, like just too much, reach out. Please reach out to Dr. Alex. You can reach out to me or some other counselor or therapist or psychotherapist in your area, where you can come in and present. Yeah, I'm frozen. I can't communicate. I don't like. My sex life has been dead for a long time, and I need help to find a way through this. You don't have to do it by yourself, and that's so important. And again, Doctor, thank you for taking the time out of your day for.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you. So everyone, take care, and we'll be seeing you next week at in and around the same time. So be well, and don't be alone. Thank you.
Bye.